Welcome back to the Unanimous Decision Podcast. I'm your host, DPalm. Follow me on Twitter at DPalm66. Follow the show on Twitter at UDPod. Follow the entire MTR Network at the MTR Network. You found us, don't lose us. Subscribe, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast for absolutely free. And now that you subscribe, do us a huge favor, 5-star review. We've had some trouble. So if you've left a 5-star review in the last month, there's a very good chance I haven't gotten it. We don't know what's going on. Something's up with the feed. Something's up with our review catcher. We noticed it on Super Tuesday. We're getting podcasts or getting reviews 3 weeks later. I'm looking into it. If you have other feedback you want to send, email us at udpodcast@gmail.com. But please leave the 5-star reviews. They do matter. They are important. Make sure you come and share and visit our landing page, udpod.mtrnetwork.net. It's brand new. I know right now it's just the audio of the shows, but we're going to be incorporating polls and video and things of that nature because Chris wants us to do video, and that means I have to be in front of a camera, much to your dismay.
That's way more work. Why would you do that? The video.
I trust me. I've always said, hey, I'm the talent. I'll turn on a microphone and talk all day, but video, I've got to, get dressed, which is crazy.
I know. It's the whole point of podcasting. You can do it without getting dressed.
It's 100% true. All right, so this is going to be the second in our series of interviews because, like I've said in the first episode, I've lived a weird life, and I've met some really cool people who do really cool things, and I talk to them because all I do is record them talking about the cool things they do. Wait, that sounded a bit reductive, but it's also true. I'm joined today by, and I want you to, I'm going to let you, promo you, because I feel like I'd missed something. I've known this young lady since we were 6?
Probably 6, yeah.
Elementary school, went to middle school, together.
What teacher did you have first grade?
I had Miss Frost.
Okay, I was bachelor.
Okay, all right. But yeah, so we grew up together, and I grew up to talk to people who do cool things, like her, Susan Simpson. She podcasts for which by the way, I know UD Pods, did I steal it? I feel like I stole it.
No. I was wondering, have you ever gotten mail for us at UD Podcast at Gmail?
I haven't yet, but now I got to look out for it. I should check the spam folder because it's this isn't about sports. But no.
What is this about murders? Yeah, so I actually have 2 podcasts now. I'm not as not quite at your numbers yet.
I'm going to back into the 45th. That's the one that you've got me. That you've got a subscriber on this side of the microphone.
Yeah, excellent. Well, so I do Undisclosed. That's what we started doing back in 2015 now, and that was kind of sort of it all started as a serial.
Right. And
I started working on that case. And at some point we were like, we should do a podcast ourselves. And now we kept going. We're in our 3rd year, which is crazy to me. And we cover primarily wrongful convictions, but a lot of criminal justice issues as well. And right now we have a lot of Philly cases. So if you're still interested in Philly stuff, check it out.
And what's the second podcast you got?
The 45th. And that's where it was basically, it's kind of a therapy session. I mean, we're going to be obsessing over Trump anyway, so might as well be useful with it.
Content. I love it. Well, let's get started on your background first because I want people to kind of know where you're coming from. Like I said, we grew up together. And if I sound a little disjointed, I got a new puppy last week.
Oh, what kind?
I don't know. It's my first ever shelter puppy.
So it's just
It's mostly black lab, but he's got really big feet. It could be some mastiff in there, maybe some shepherd. I don't know, but I have a feeling he's going to be huge, and I'm just sleep deprived. I'll tell you what, though.
You've not posted on Twitter, I would have noticed, have you?
I've been posting on it's other places. I've been keeping it mostly off of Twitter because I use Twitter to get angry at things.
I'll have to stalk you elsewhere then.
But I was thinking, because you mentioned this when it talks about talking to you, I'd have a lot more sleep if I just got a pet turtle, wouldn't I? Yes,
well, did you ever hear the full story about that?
I never did, and I'm really glad we're recording.
So what do you remember?
I don't, because I honestly had forgotten about this until you brought it up. I do know there was a transaction of sorts. I believe we were in 5th grade. I think I gave you money, and I think I got no turtle.
That's basically what happened. So I sold you a turtle for $5.
I knew it was $5. I told my wife, I think it was just $5. She's like, Dana, that's a lot of money. I'm like, I know, right? Thank you. She was on my side, or she was pretending.
And there was a turtle. There was, in fact, wait, hold on. There was a turtle. So what happened is you gave me the $5. You were totally good for it, and I was going to eat a turtle the next day.
Right.
And I had been out like running around. That's what I did. I went around and like caught animals all the time. What am I saying? I do that now still. But I had these cute turtles. It was a little red-eared slider. And it's probably totally unethical and horrible of me to catch it and make it a pet, but it got worse from there. So that day, I brought the turtle to school with me, and I didn't tell my dad, obviously.
Yeah,
Somehow I was probably playing with it.
It's good.
Yeah, the turtle got out of the little container on the way to Sarah Smith, our school. And I couldn't tell my dad because I wasn't supposed to have it in the first place. So I just like went into school, was like, oh God, I'll get it back later. So get picked up in the day, can't find the turtle. And I tell myself it has somehow gotten out of the car and it has gone on to live a happy turtle life somewhere. Then like, I don't know, a week later, there was a smell.
Oh no.
Yeah.
You know what? That story's worth $5. That story's worth $5.
I did pay you back. I did pay you back. I didn't tell you why. I remember that because I was so ashamed. But yeah, that poor turtle.
Well, I feel I got off way better than the turtle. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
I got off way better than the turtle in that story.
So, I was seriously upset. I was so traumatized. I'm like, oh my God, I can't tell anyone what happened.
So
and my dad figured it out eventually. We caught the damn turtle, but
yeah, the smell in the car tipped him off. No, but so that's something I do remember about you. Like you said, you were the person always going around finding animals and things like that. How did you find your way into law?
I didn't know what else to do.
Like, you sound like 8 of my 10 lawyer friends.
It's like a senior year, you're a poli-sci major. What are you like? Really? What are you gonna do?
If you're me, you go to work for a startup.
Were you poli-sci?
I was.
See, that's the other option, I guess. Startup or law, and I didn't know any startups, so.
So you end up getting into law, and based on the work you're doing now, what drew you to kind of the holes in the justice system?
It was really, I mean, I've always been like blogging about various discrete issues,
right?
But I really didn't get into criminal law till I did. I spent a year doing appellate criminal law in DC, prosecution side, and around that time, Serial came out, I think a little bit after, and I started writing about that, and then I got hooked up with Rabia Chaudhry, he listens to Serial. It's a family friend of Anand's, and as well as a law professor in South Carolina, and it just kind of evolved from there. It was an accident. It never was really planned. But then after we did that case, we found more cases. We had a platform, so we kept going with it.
That's great. So what was it, just the popularity of Serial that caught your ear, or was it just kind of a perfect storm of where maybe you were looking for something different to be doing, or was it just happenstance?
Well, so the way I actually found like Serial, the actual show, was pretty terrible. It was an old coworker of mine ended up having more problems than I ever realized, and attempted to kill someone. Oh wow! And I know it was bad, and I was going to be a witness in the case. I was so glad when she pled out. Thank God. But like I spent a few days just like desperately trying to Google about the case and like find out what had happened and how this could have been and like what was going on.
Right.
And I found Serial. I'm like, what is this weird show? Like, I listened to podcasts before, but never like this kind.
Right.
And I finally listened to the podcast, and I'm like, there's like some issues here. They're not covering enough. So I just started writing a lot about it. And like, I don't, my strengths as a writer are not being succinct. I'm a long-winded writer for sure. But it worked for Serial because there's so much to cover. So I just like wrote massive post laying out all the evidence we had based on what there was.
So what you're saying to me is you found Serial intellectually insulting so much that you had to write about it.
No, it was a mystery. I liked it at the time. I still like it. I do have mixed feelings in some regards. It's an amazing series.
Right.
And also I am an attorney. So like I'm inherently, a show that's made for everyone is not going to fill in some of the gaps that I want filled in.
Of course not.
And that's not a the show's problem. That's just my problem as a lawyer. But yeah, there was definitely more to learn, and I just kind of kept going with it. And I'm really glad for that, because there are so many cases out there that before I hadn't been aware of and didn't quite realize the extent of the problem.
Right. And I think while the Adnan case did kind of capture the imaginations and the hearts of a lot of Americans, to the point where I was trying to describe to my parents what it was about, and I was telling them about, oh no, so Susan and I, we sit on the couch and we're living in Philadelphia at the time. I was like, we'll get bundled up and we'll circle around the speaker, listen to this podcast. And my mom was like, you sound like you're listening to the radio. And I was like, that's a really good description.
It's ours. So what was your first podcast?
My very first podcast was, goodness, it was Duju Podcast was the name of the podcast. And it was with DujuCrazy.net, and it was a Georgia football website. And it was because I was in Philadelphia. I was very cold, and I needed to talk to someone about Georgia football because it was the one thing that brought me joy, which is a lie, because as I've covered ad nauseum on this podcast, it causes me mostly pain.
Literally, the only time Georgia sports has ever brought me joy was 1994 when the Braves won that one time, and since then it's always been downhill. That was the high point, and it's over after that.
You've just summed up 90% of the emails I get, just taunting Atlanta sports. But yeah, from there it was just kind of, you've known me for a while, and I don't think I've ever been described as soft-spoken.
Okay, but yeah, so So I was a small kid. I was kind of shrimpy and wiry. I am pretty sure I was bigger than you.
Yeah, I was very.
By a lot.
People see the old pictures of me and they never believe. They're like, "Wait a second, when were you replaced?" I'm like, "I wasn't. Don't be me." And so for me, it's always been
there were 3 kids I was taller than, and you were one of them.
Well, things have changed. No, but it's interesting for me because if you go through old report cards where people talking about me as a kid, it was he's bright, but he talks all the time. And when I figured out that people would actually listen to my nonsensical ramblings, I was like, well, then I'm going to do that. And for me, it's a lot of fun. But for you, it feels like work because it's tied so intrinsically to the work you do. You said you're on your 3rd year of your UD pod. What have you seen doing the work and then trying to convert that work into something that's not something that just be taken in by the layperson, the non-lawyer, but it's also, let's be real, has to be someone entertaining.
It does, and that's the kind of the well, it does. It's not always a problem. It's not a problem at all, really. It's a tension there, I guess I'd say, because there are so many cases out there, and then realistically, and for the purpose of the podcast, we do have to look for ones that make a good show.
Right.
Whenever I catch myself thinking in those terms, I hate it. And I hate someone calls me or emails me and hey, I got a case, look at it. And I'm sitting there reading it. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do a podcast out of this. I don't know if I can make a long story out of it. And it's horrible because, yes, it's the format. And yes, I think we make a difference by making the stories accessible to the public and telling them. But there are plenty of important cases out there that need someone to look at them. And the story is just not ever really going to be one that makes for a good podcast. So I hate that that's kind of one of the criteria I have to look at when I'm evaluating cases. But it is.
Yeah, and see, I think that you have a much harder task in that than me because I get to talk about sports. By and large, I get to talk about sports and or nerdy stuff. We run on.
Okay, wait, when did you get into I do not recall you. Why didn't I know that you were into this, the nerd stuff?
Because I had to be quiet about it. This wasn't. No, that's what I'm trying to explain to people is that. When I was growing up, it wasn't you couldn't be did you see Dragon Ball Z yesterday?
I was totally like that.
But the thing is,
hanging out to dry.
I had my pockets. I had Mike Prather. I had Prather, who's been on the show repeated. Y'all know the homie Mike. I had Lance. We had our little pockets, but we never knew we could be loud about it. And that's one of the cool things I've discussed about social media is that not only can I be loud about it, I can talk to the people who've written things that have changed my life. When or better example, James Roberts writes More Than Meets the Eye. It's a Transformers book by IDW. I have touted up and down this network. I love this book. It's sci-fi writ large. It's giant robots that are human that make you want to cry. And I've
Why
had
couldn't we all just be like open nerds? That would have been so much better. Like life would have been like a million times better.
I think that's where we're headed, though. I think that's why, like, the sea change and people are so like, oh, so and so looks bad. I'm like, man, I sat through Generation X on Fox, buddy. You can't tell me what looks bad. I've seen the bad. You can't tell me what's bad. So yeah, I think that we've got those nerd calluses that now, like, not saying that we're accepting of lower standards, but we're just, it's a golden age. And I can say things like, I got to talk to James Roberts about a comic book that he wrote about Transformers and get great responses from people all over the world. And it's just something that's so freeing, and because I get to be a nerd and everyone gets to find out.
I'm just saying, like, imagine like if we go back in time and if we actually both knew that this was like a shared interest.
I'm telling you, like this, it's so weird, and without going too far off, I was talking to one of my really good friends, and he was explaining a situation where he was like, I just don't want. He was trying to not show that he couldn't pop the hood on his new car, and so he quietly went over to one of his friends who had a similar car and was like, hey, can you? Because and when eventually he got it open, whatever he had to fix, we had to fix. He goes inside and everyone's making fun of him. But he realized that fear of being rejected by his peer group was so real and so palpable that he literally like tried to sneak and fix it. But as soon as they found out, it wasn't a big deal. It's just something internally we put on ourselves that we say, oh no, everyone's going to judge me for X, Y, or Z. Meanwhile, everyone else is dealing with that same own internal psychosis, doing that same math about everything they do. When if we could all just be honest about it, we'd all be happier. You're 100% right.
Plus, middle school is just terrible in general.
Oh, middle school's the worst, the worst. No, but so I do want to talk about the Trump pod. This is going to run later than we're talking, and I feel odd talking about current events because in Trumpland, what's news today is a footnote tomorrow and is forgotten by the next week.
Daniel, sorry, your feed dropped out for a second.
I'm sorry. I was saying that with the speed of what happens in Trumpland,
Oh God.
what we talk about today would be irrelevant tomorrow and be forgotten by the next week. And so, how do you build a podcast about? You're trying to cover basically a a train going off the tracks at high speeds constantly.
It's hard, and I have a lot more respect now for a lot of the things I saw as problems in the media and how it's being reported on. And I think I have a healthier appreciation now for like trying to catch Niagara Falls in like a bucket, basically. And it's so one kind of advance we have, or at least for my styles, I try and do really deep dives into sort of more topics that are sort of match my background. So like the financial issues in Trump land, or like corruption issues, things that I'm familiar with and see in the various events going on. And that kind of helps a little bit if you can just focus and do like the whole backstory and all the nitty gritty stuff, and then just forget the day to day. But the day to day is so overwhelming, you can't really forget it until the next day when a whole new round of disasters has replaced whatever happened before.
Well, how do you find? And what I really appreciate about y'all's show is that you do those deep dives, like you said. But for me, it's and I hate to even give any credence to the phrase, but it feels like there's so much information that is either competing or people trying to scoop other people. And I think that the care with which you guys approach it really makes you guys a reliable source to keep track of what the hell is going on, because people are talking about memos upon counter memos upon re-memos.
It's gonna get worse. We're gonna have like the never-ending memo. It's gonna be awful.
But no one's saying the words collusion or corruption anymore, which is crazy.
It's I think part of that is because of Mueller. I think people feel like it's not as necessary because Mueller is a million miles ahead of whatever the media is at right now. So it's not on them, basically. It's not on. He has resources that no one else can match, and in terms of like legal process, in terms of the teams got dedicated to it. So I think that's why there has been some shift away from the Mueller investigation, not because they've forgotten it or because it's boring, but because that's something that's in the works and will be coming out. And meanwhile, there's all kinds of daily interesting looking disasters to gawk at for a bit before we move to the next one.
Well, the most recent disaster to gawk at appears to be Trump's fascination with military parades.
Like, what's he thinking? Like, DC can't handle that.
Just not even from
Also,
a fiscal or logistic perspective, just maybe just, I don't know, a strict PR move, like that's Tiananmen, like that's Red Square, like that's imagery that Americans aren't going to find welcoming.
they're boring as shit. Why would you want to go sit there and like watch like stuff be dragged by you on the street? Like, I don't understand the appeal on this on any level.
Well, I think you're talking to a larger problem with parades in general, which is a
Yes,
whole
it's
other
true.
problem.
That's
I
related to
am
military parades.
100% on board with you. It's slow traffic. It's all it is. But I think that, like, even by floating this at the end of such a crazy day, and again, I'm recording this on February 6th. If anyone needs to go back in the calendar and say, wait, what the hell happened today? Because
Yeah.
it's 2018. That's the world we live in. How can you, like, first of all, I don't think it's even feasible because just fiscally and, like you said, logistically in DC, if you've never been to DC, it doesn't lend itself to something like this. I think that's fair to say.
We can't even make the metro system run right. Like, how are we going to carry through, like, tanks and whatever the hell else? I don't even know what you would have in a military parade. Tanks, I guess? Lots of tanks?
Well, the ones that they pipe out from North Korea are like showing off new ordnance, which I guess I don't. And
Oh, God, it's going to be more of, like, his, look at my hands. My hands are a big size.
look,
Oh, God.
and now we're talking about this, and I can't even barely remember that he called Democrats treasonous. I think that was this morning.
And a week ago, we found out that he paid off a porn actress he had an affair with.
Susan, when I tell you that I just tip my cap to the work you guys do, because I cover sports, and my bad weeks are like the summer because I hate baseball, and I'm like, what are we going to talk about? Shit, what are we going to talk about? And your weeks are like, okay, there's only 24 hours of the day, and we have to sleep and bathe, and we can only record for so long.
I remember before Trump, I used to care a lot, like a lot about like really tiny niche issues that I felt were really important and like these discrete things I felt really strong. Like it could be like one line in the code, like an evidence rule, whatever, that like needed to be fixed. And I remember being like really passionate about that and like writing a lot about it and like feeling a lot like we really need to fix this problem. And like that would never cross my mind now. Like there's no time to worry about like the little tiny stuff that no one else really cares about, but still kind of matters a lot. And that's probably one of the lesser noticed tragedies of the Trump era is that there's no time to try and fix the small things. We're just trying to stop the fire.
And that's a really good analogy. And I think that something I thought going into this whole experience, I think is the best way to describe the last year. I always thought that Trump was sued a lot because of the sheer volume of criminality. Like if you break enough laws, you're going to get sued. Just out of just making omelets, breaking eggs. What I'm learning here is that they're just shitty criminals.
He didn't even get sued that. He didn't get prosecuted that much. Actually, a very shockingly little amount. He had some civil suits. He's never really been involved seriously. He had that thing with like Judge Jeanine Pirro, where she was like making contributions, or he was making contributions to her, and he was claiming it was actually like his wife. I think it was actually the second one, Tiffany's mom. What's her name? It's all blurred together.
You sound like him.
Like criminal issues at time to time, but on balance, it is shocking how little he's actually been investigated before now. And like, okay, here's the thing I still can't get over. I said it before, but it blows my mind whenever I think about it. Trump's business partner for like the 2000 like decade was an active FBI informant who was known for like helping with money laundering investigations, explaining how they worked, and himself was like a con man. He claimed he was going to help the CIA. Well, he told the CIA, he was like, you know what, don't prosecute me for this this insider stock thing I was doing, because I can help you go buy Osama bin Laden's Stinger missiles in Europe. And he went to Europe and pretended to try and buy them. And I think he was probably just lying the whole time. I don't think he really could. But he, you know, got a very sweet deal on this criminal sentence. And he's out in the world working with Trump on investments in really shady deals, like Trump Soho, where they sold to like the mayor of a Kazakhstani, like the Almaty, I think, with Capital, like sold him some units that were pretty much definitely laundered from government funds there. And that whole time, you know, the FBI is there watching. He's their informant. Like, they have to keep an eye on him. There's no way they don't know what's going on. and no one moved to stop it.
So two quick questions, not even quick, just two questions to close us up here. One, how Susan Simpson is now in control of the universe. Nothing irrational. You're not bringing any turtles back to life. But you have this opportunity to this is going to end in the best way for you. What's the best outcome of the Mueller investigation and the travesty in the Oval?
He erases the last season of Walking Dead and makes him do it again.
I don't even watch. I just read the comic because I'm that much of a nerd. But it's on when I'm in the house, and I will agree it was a little disjointed, and I didn't appreciate some of the storytelling choices they made. No, but
I didn't finish it. I couldn't. I hated it so much. I was like, I'm a diehard. I was a diehard. Even like the ones that were bad, I liked them, and I'm over it now.
Oh, it's always sad when they lose the diehards.
And that feels like a safer thing to mess with, and like, the future of the Republic.
Fair enough.
I was going to try and go there and try and Mueller's the right guy for the job, and not just Mueller. His team is like the all-star team. And prosecutors are often overzealous and have issues in how they do things, but like the ones he has are the best of doing what they're trying to do. And they're very broadly spaced out in their expertise area. Like they have like everyone. They've got like your number one guy for like money laundering, number one guy for like foreign terrorism prosecutions, the number one guy for like Fourth Amendment stuff.
I had a lawyer friend describe them as basically the lawyer Justice League.
It is. Well, see, no, because I feel like that would have to be defense attorneys. But
fair enough.
What's the group of superheroes is like they're evil but work for good sometimes?
Some would say the Justice League. Zack Snyder probably would. I don't know. He ruined those poor characters. They did nothing to him. All right. And lastly, before I let you go, I got to ask. I personally, I am a subscriber to the 45th. I don't listen to the other show as much, but which one do you find more fulfilling, or does each one scratch a different itch?
The 45th is more for me.
Okay.
So the Undisclosed is really so for 45th, it's like stuff I'm going to be obsessing anyway. I'm reading it and talking about it. It makes me feel better sometimes. Well, not really. I think it does, and it makes me feel worse. So that's not. I'm not going to change the world that way. I'm not going to help anyone's lives. I'm just going to help us all maybe, hopefully, be able to cope a bit better by understanding what's happening. That's the only goal I've got there. For Undisclosed, it is a podcast, but it's definitely I am an attorney, but these aren't my clients, so it's sort of a weird relationship. But I feel very protective about like making sure that I'm not going to harm their cases and do everything I can to help it. And it's just a hard sphere to work in. These cases are always in their last legs. They're always, one shot short of like gone forever. So it's a lot more emotionally trying, but a lot more fulfilling. Sort of. Again, it's a long, hard road for all these cases. So even when you have progress, it's just one more step along the way. But even if there wasn't a podcast, I'd still be doing this work if I could.
Right. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Thanks for having me on.
It's so funny. I was like, yeah, podcast. Like, so does someone else from your high school class. I'm like, well, who? Like Susan. I'm like, oh yeah, he's like a real podcaster and stuff.
I'm just really upset that you never told me in middle school that you like comic books.
I'm being stared at by about 50 Transformers right now. And you know why I hate Transformers? Because when I was a child,
That's amazing.
My parents wouldn't buy me the Transformers. But now Hasbro set their game up. They will release a beautiful Astro train that's staring at me right now. I just picked up an Ultra Magnus. Very happy with the haul. But again, thank you so much for coming on and talking about all things from Turtles to Transformers to things that, matter. Some would say even more. That was your show. This is your outro. See you guys next week.